I had been anticipating saying a few words on the Canelo Crawford fight, and I will after this, but there's been sad breaking news earlier today. It's actually the early hours of the 15th now. But on Sunday, that Ricky Hatton has passed away. Ricky the Hitman Hatton, unquestionably one of our best fighters, and it's kind of shocking news because he was only 46, and it does seem kind of sudden. 2025 has seen a lot of big names in the sport of boxing pass away. We've had George Foreman, who needs no introduction, the great Italian Nino Benvenuti, the very tough, durable cruiserweight Dwight Muhammad Kawi, Joe Bugner, one of our best contenders ever. I made a video on him recently. He had some great fights. And now Ricky Hatton. And there's also been less well-known figures in the sport have passed away in the ring. John Cooney in Belfast earlier this year, and on the same card in Tokyo, and I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly, Shigetoshi Katari and Hiromasa Yurikawa on the very same card. I think that's an unprecedented situation. I can't think of another time when two fighters have died on the same card, not fighting each other, but on the same card. I can't think of another example of that. I know the Japanese boxing authorities had an urgent review into their safety measures. Now, there's been no cause of death reported in the case of Ricky Hatton. All that we know is he's been found dead at his home in Hyde in Greater Manchester. But, looking at his career, it's difficult to find another British fighter that had quite the level of fan support that Ricky Hatton had. Tyson Fury always had big followings, so did Joe Calzaghe, but I think Ricky Hatton may be in a league of his own in terms of the almost fanatical fan following he had. He famously won the world title beating Costa Sue in Manchester 2005 in front of over 50,000 people. But he then went on to share the ring with such legends as Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. And I know Pacquiao's paid a tribute. I'm sure Mayweather will as well. Tribute support in from the boxing world. Hatton had his challenges outside the ring. A charity that I support, Andy's Man's Club, which is a sort of support group for men and mental health, put a tribute earlier. Unfortunately, here in Sunderland, we have had a problem with men taking their own lives, to just put it bluntly. And on our bridge, I've seen a lot of little notices today. Not just there's always been a Samaritan's notice, but also just other messages of support, trying to urge people to speak to someone. And that's something that Ricky Hatton was always promoting, about breaking down the stigmas on mental health. Boxing is a very, very tough sport, and I've long believed that in a sport where there's so much ego and so much machismo, the physical side is obvious, but the mental health side, I feel, is too often not taken seriously. I mean, even now with I mentioned I talk a little bit about the Canelo Crawford fight. I watched it on Netflix. It's a sort of fight that fans want to see. Two evenly matched fighters, two fighters at their peak, or at least with very, very stellar records. In the end, Crawford got the decision, and I would agree with that. I think in the fight, Crawford was just a bit more active from what I saw. And as much as I'm a big fan of Canelo, I think Crawford deserved it. I just haven't followed his career as closely as Canelo's. But, that deserves its bill of a super fight. That's the sort of fight you only see once in a generation. It's probably the biggest fight, at least outside the heavyweight division, since Mayweather Pacquiao. That it was, and it may well turn out to be one of the most viewed fights of all time. when the Netflix viewership's taken into account. I think it was also a record for Las Vegas because most of the venues in Vegas are about 20,000. That was, I think, 72,000 in attendance, or over 70,000 anyway, which seems really big for Las Vegas standards, by Las Vegas standards. But anyway, even now with Crawford's win, there's already people coming out and calling him a runner and all this sort of rubbish, the sort of things they threw at Floyd Mayweather. Um, the sport of boxing, I followed the sport for decades, literally. And I've been in the ring myself, albeit at amateur level. But one thing that I don't like, I mean, there's always been an appeal with the sport for me. But one thing I don't like is the fickle nature of boxing fans. So I wonder how many of the people paying tribute to Ricky Hatton have used the words bum or runner or tomato can describing other fighters. It just seems that when a fighter passes away, or when there's a tragedy in the ring like that double death in Tokyo, fans are all, oh, it's awful, condolences, etc., etc. And then they're immediately back to disrespecting fighters. The way I see it is true fans should respect all fighters. Now, I'm not saying you have to like all fighters. There's some fighters I really have no time for the personality at all. Billy Joe Saunders was recently arrested for hair coursing, which is a vile blood sport. And I'm thinking, and please Canelo beat you. That was my thought when I heard that. But regardless of what people think of fighters as people, it takes guts to get in a ring, it does. And I just, what is there to take away from this? I mean, the other fighters I named were a good bit older, the other famous fighters. Hatton was only 46 years old. I understand he was gearing up for another fight, a sort of comeback. So I don't know what happened, but it's sad news. He was a big fan of Manchester City, I understand. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say he's one of the most famous Mancunians ever. So it's just a sad news for the world of boxing. It's always sad when a fighter dies, particularly in the ring, but it's also sad when a fighter dies young. And yeah, I might watch this. I haven't watched it for a few years now, so I might watch it at some point. But that's it, really. The thing that galls me in the sport of boxing is how willing fans are to be disrespectful to fighters. Yet these men put their health on the line for entertainment, really. And yes, they get very hefty pay packages and at professional level, but it's a tough sport. And I do think, to be fair to Tyson Fury, he's also opened up on the mental health issue. I don't particularly care for Fury's personality recently, but he has also opened up on that issue. I think that side of the sport is too often overlooked. I actually think the fighters, and I know some people would disregard this, but aside from a medical check before fights, I think fighters the mental health side needs to be looked at. I recall the time that Oliver McCall had a breakdown in the ring, and Oliver McCall was, tough man. It can happen to anyone. It was just like a mental breakdown. Andrew Gallotta also had a situation in the ring where he left in the first round in the Tyson fight and just, went out of the ring to a hail of abuse. Now, I sort of understand that people have paid a lot of money for a ticket and a fighter's not doing the job technically, but the mental health side of the sport, I feel, for too long has been overlooked. People forget boxers are human beings. And whilst they are by nature tough athletes, they have to be, they are human beings. They have frailties. They have vulnerabilities like everyone else. And that's something that needs to be remembered. Amidst all the noise, So rest in peace, Ricky Hatton. It is sad news, and I hope though people don't just think about the sadness of the man dying at 46, but also think of an illustrious career, a very accomplished career. He is one of our best fighters of all time, absolutely. I'd have no problem having Ricky Hatton in the top 10 or 15 fighters. Maybe not the top 5 for me, but I would say certainly in the top 10 or 15. I mean, always very an aggressive forward style fighter. And like I say, a huge fan following. Rest in peace, Ricky Hatton.